everybody. Here's another close encounter from the external communication team of the International Breathwork Foundation. And today I'm very delighted and very happy because we have a very special guest again. Of course, they're all special, but this one time is Judy G. And Judy is Australian from, I think from origin, but now lives in France, if I'm correct. So, but we'll get to that later. But first, Maria. No. First, Judy G. Could you just introduce yourself just a little time, not give away too much, but just introduce yourself, who you are, and how long you've been within the FBI.
Yes, Judy, tell us about your work for the
your undercover work as an agent.
My undercover work in the IBF, which is no longer undercover because you've just exposed me.
Sorry.
I am from Australia, and I come from the Melbourne area of Australia, and I've been living in France though for the last 30 years, where I'm based. And about the IBF, I was present at the second JIC so missed out on Sweden, but then was in Poland. And then I had a fairly long stint inside the IBF, and then I had a little nice several years vacation, and now I've been back again for quite some years.
And you've had several roles in the IBF, if I'm not mistaken, Judy G.
I have had several roles. I think like a lot of people that got involved in admin in the IBF, I started off as a national coordinator, and then I was also vice president, and I was president for some years, and I organized the JIC in France 21 years ago. And I've been on the integrity committee, and more recently I've been on the UN team when we were organizing to get the ECOSOC status. And more recently than that, I'm on video projects. So I tend to move around inside the IBF and do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And these days I'm on the loose inside the IBF. I don't really have a fixed role, but I'm still there.
Yeah, you definitely are one of the faces of IBF, that's for sure.
Thank you. That's nice to hear, actually. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, let's start with the first question, Maria. Would you like to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Here I go. Judy G. I actually don't know this about you. How did you get into breathwork? What's your story? How did you stumble upon this breathwork saga, this journey?
Yeah, this breathwork journey. So the way I encountered breathwork is that when I was around about 19 years old, my boyfriend was studying psychology at the FAC in Sydney, and I was invited to go to a 5-day experimental psychotherapy course that was being run by his teachers at the university. And so that was actually my first, I was a participant in a psychotherapy group, and very experimental, and they got us to do breathing. And so that was my very first experience of breath work, and it was actually so powerful that I found it really scary. Incredible. I knew something like really, really important was happening to me, but to be honest, I didn't really quite know what to make of it. And when I look back at that, I'm realizing that was around about in 1996 or 1976 or 77. So it was like really in the beginning. Yeah. And I suspect that perhaps those psychologists didn't completely know what they were doing. They had us down on the floor breathing, and I remember I got tetany. Wow. Like quite a strong tetany. And I have no memory about anything else that happened in that session except this sense of, oh my God, this is something, nothing like this has ever happened to me. And the prevailing thought was, I'm actually not ready for this. I'm not prepared for this. So even though I was really impressed and impacted, I put that on the side, and I knew that, and then a couple of years later, I started to hear about rebirthing, and so I knew that that's what was being discussed. I knew that that's what I'd done, and I was just waiting until the right moment to start to do breath work. And so then that happened in 1980 when I went to live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was doing ongoing training, developing my toolbox to be a holistic practitioner. And there I encountered breathwork again. And it was perfect. It was a perfect moment. I was completely ready. I was 3 or 4 years older. And I was at that point in my journey, I was really looking to dig down into the depths of my psyche and to do the cleaning work. And so it was perfect. And the experience was as powerful, except the difference was that I was more mature and I was also inside a training group, and that's really when my story with breathwork really began, because I was doing a breathwork training, and very quickly I went on to become an apprentice to the trainers that were working with me and to start to lead trainings. And you know, that is something like 44 years ago. So it's
Wow.
quite a long time that I've been journeying with the breath.
So Judy, my second question to you is, what is breathwork today for you in your life right now? So do you practice it every day? Do you teach it? What does it mean to you?
Breathwork today for me is, it's more of a personal practice. It's been now around about some years, 5 years since I actually stopped teaching trainings. And so I still work with clients on an individual level. And I do some small little groups here and there, but I'm actually taking a break from, I'm taking a break from trainings, and I'm starting to think that that's going to be really quite a long break, because I'm actually enjoying not having the responsibility of a big school, and by the time I finished, by the time we started winding down our training, it was really quite a big structure, and it was going on for years and years, and it was really nice to be freed of that. And I think the most important aspect of your question for me is, what is breathwork for me today? Is that it's something that it's really is part of my ongoing daily practice, and yet I'm working with conscious breathing these days in what I would call a very informal way. Every now and then I'll give myself a breath session, or I might ask a colleague to accompany me on a session, which during these COVID days, of course, is mostly online, and which is not the same as being. I personally love touch in breath work, and so I'm one of those breath workers that's had to adjust to that. The way I use the breath is that it's just really part of my life. I breathe in my bed in the morning for a little while, and then I pay attention to my breath during the day, and then if I notice that I'm getting reactive, stressed, I just try and pull back and come back to the breath. And I'm also experimenting regularly with the concepts of coherent breathing, which I've been quite involved with, and that all boils down to a very simple type of breathing, which I like very much. When I want more energy, take those longer, deeper inhales, and then if I want to relax and let go and like wind it down, then it's stretch out that exhale. And if I want something that's more harmonious, I'm paying attention to the count, to the balance between the in-breath and the out-breath. And I guess if somebody had have asked me 40 years ago, that's what could become of conscious breathing for me, I never would have imagined that, because back in the day when I started my training, we were doing very cathartic breath work. I was in the San Francisco Bay Area. It was in the early 80s. All therapy work was quite cathartic and confrontational. And on top of that, I was trained in the Osho tradition. So I was trained from a tantric perspective with breath work, which was fully involving the body and the emotions. We were working very much with the physical through to the emotional, also taking into consideration belief systems and spiritual transpersonal. But we were working through the blockages, and it was very expressive in those days, coming from an angle of just like, let's just play out all of the drama until there is silence and stillness and going inwards. So that strongly influenced the way that I also teach my trainings. I like to have a training space where people can pretty much go anywhere where they need to go, as long as there's clear guidelines and there's security and safety. And I find then that the inward journeying part of breath work and the coming into the vast spaces and the stillness and the equilibrium, it happens naturally. So that's the way I practice with myself. And
beautiful.
Yeah, in my own practice, except I also notice as I'm getting older and I think I'm getting more steady and more wise, there's really not much emotional process going on. And I suspect also that could be because of this, because of the way that conscious breathing is integrated into my daily life. It's sometimes I'm surprised that I'm not maybe having so many sessions, let's say. But then when I reflect on it, I think, well, yes, this also can be normal because there's a homeostasis that's going on more regularly. And also, as we know, a regular meditation practice is also really helps stabilize the whole body mind system.
Can you explain that word, that homeostasis? I don't know what that is.
Homeostasis, which is the natural balance of the system. It's the homeostasis refers to the innate desire, the inbuilt organization of the body mind system to maintain balance, so that whenever anything goes out of balance, the whole body mind system will try and bring it back into the balance, because that's the optimal operating system for an organism. And our bodies are constantly regulating and recalibrating themselves.
Thank you. I learned something new today. Wonderful.
So Judy G, listening to you and your incredible experience, and if I heard you correctly, is it 40 years already that you have? 40 years ago, or even 44 years ago?
Yeah, I think we're at 44 actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. In all those 44 years, there must have been some. You must have an anecdote or something. What inspired you? And if you think about the breath, it's like, oh, I remember one experience, or it was hilarious, or it was profound, or it's something you would like to share, one anecdote in all those years of experience that you would like to share with us. Could you give us something juicy or less juicy?
Certainly can. I am, and I will. But what I'm going to share with you is not hilarious, not at all, or at least it wasn't for me. So I hope this is more touching on something that's a little bit more towards profound. Because for me, the most deep experience I've ever had with breathing was when I had a very, very close brush with death. And this happened about 17, 20 years ago, when I got encephalitis and meningitis, which, if you don't know what that is, for the people that don't know what that is, it's a very life-threatening disease. It's an infection of the brain and of the membrane surrounding the brain, and it's a viral infection that the virus gets inside your brain, and so it creates in the body. It's a very, very serious disease, and a third of the people that get that disease die from it. A third of them have permanent brain damage, and a third of them survive. So luckily, I'm one of the third that survived. And I'm very happy to report that, because I would have been really, really not okay with dying. And the reason I want to talk about that experience today is because I have this absolute conviction that it was everything that I know about the breath that helped me to survive that experience, because that kind of experience is absolutely terrifying. Because what happens is the whole frontal cortex breaks down. So actually the functioning of the personality and the ability to speak and talk and understand ceases or it did in me during the time of the infection, during the time of the swelling. And it's something like having your whole computer crash, except it's happening inside and really close up. And plus it's very, very painful. It's agonizing. It's like a migraine times 1,000, and there's nausea. It's a really, really, so I was in a very, very hostile environment, let's say. The internal environment became very hostile, a very, very uncomfortable place to be. And yet I knew instinctively, I had this absolute conviction that I must not leave my body, that I must not leave myself, that I must absolutely hold to the integrity of my whole self in order to avoid brain damage. And also because I did not want to die. And yet at the same time, all I wanted to do was leave my body and get away from this pain and horrible, horrible feeling of being in a body. And so it was, and this was an experience that went on for, I had 2 episodes of it. So it lasted for 1 week, and then I was recovering, and then I had a relapse. And so I got to experience it again a second time. Except it was even worse the second time because then I knew what was wrong with me. So I knew about the dangers. And so the only stable reality that I could hook up to inside of myself was my breath. And because it was like I was witnessing everything else that used to be stable was disappearing and could not be relied on anymore, because I couldn't talk and I couldn't express myself. And although I could understand what was being said to me in the moments when I was conscious. But the one thing that I knew from my experience with breath work was that as long as we breathe, we're alive. As long as the breath is connected, as long as there's a circular breath, we're alive, and the system and the whole body-mind system is receiving the oxygen that it needs on the inhale and the release and the let go that it needs on the exhale. So I'm coming back to this notion of homeostasis, of balance. And because I couldn't hold my consciousness in the part of my body where it normally lives, which is in the brain, because this was like a wreck in that part of my body, I managed to move my consciousness down into my belly area, and basically went and lived there for a couple of weeks and just did all my breathing from that part of my body, from my body and my belly and my chest, and kept this circular breathing going. And I would say that it was the most intensive training that I've ever had in breath work.
Wow.
Because I was in survival mode, big time. It was really scary, and I thought I could die. And I knew that if the virus got into the wrong places in my brain, even my respiratory system could break down, and I'd have to go on a ventilator, and nobody knows when anything is going to happen. And so I got into the most intimate relationship with my breath that I've ever had, even more intimate than anything I'd ever had before, which was to just stay with the breath, because as we all know, people die on the exhale. Well, at the end of there's always a last exhale, and then the person dies. So what my mission became was never let that exhale go all the way out. There always has to be another inhale. As long as there's another inhale, I'm fine. I'm on the side of life. And so this is what I did for hours and hours, and really for days and days, whenever I was conscious, was I just kept doing that circular breathing, and that was very, very small breathing sometimes, because I was really getting small because there was nowhere where I was comfortable living in my body. So I really got this very, very up close experience of what is it if I get, my consciousness gets really, 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 really small and tiny and protected in a really little place, but it's still, I'm still breathing. So I'm still alive. So I'm still here.
Wow,
that's a
quite
powerful
a story.
sharing. Thank you so much, Judy.
Yeah, it's like in your anecdote, there is it's inspirational, and it brings all the work of breath work in its everything you experience and everything you went through. That's what we want to in the breath surrender to life, and that's what you did. You surrendered to life, and you just kept on, and that's beautiful said. Like if there's an inhale, I'm alive. I'm alive. So wow.
Exactly. As long as there's an inhale.
It's really, and well, so Maria, do you have a last or final question for Judy G, or
will I see you in Germany next year, Judy?
Oh my God.
Good question.
That's probably
I think we're due a super duper hug, don't you agree?
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah.
Let's hold that vision that we make it. If this world will release us back into some kind of, into whatever the new normal will be when we can circulate the way we want to. Yeah. Let's hope so. Hey.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for this short interview and for the powerful story. That was amazing. Thank you for that insight.
Thank you for your time.
Welcome. And as long as we can breathe, we know we're alive.
Exactly.
And that's a really nice wrap up of this interview. So thank you very much, and we'll see each other with the next Close Encounter. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.